Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. The concept of gamification, which involves integrating game design elements and principles into non gaming contexts, it serves as a strategic approach to motivate and shape human behavior. This innovative technique empowers individuals to feel more in control within a risk free environment. And human nature is inherently competitive with this innate desire to compete, whether against ourselves or others. So, by incorporating elements of competition, a fundamental aspect of game design, gamification ignites this deep seated desire to excel and outperform others or a previous benchmark of our own, thus fostering commitment and engagement in specific activities or tasks. Moreover, people are inclined to thrive when they can visualize their progress, making them more eager to participate and intensifying their involvement. Gamified content contributes to effective information retention by emphasizing problem solving, allowing individuals to learn through practice. These techniques provide a platform for valuable feedback and skill development with minimal risk, resulting in a substantial enhancement of information retention and user engagement. In a world where mental health is often negatively portrayed, perpetuating stereotypes and harmful stigmas across various forms of media, there emerges a beacon of hope in the form of Nisha Lehmann, a dedicated mobile app developer by trade. She's also a passionate advocate for enhanced mental well being. Nisha firmly believes that the path to improved mental health lies within the realm of gaming, specifically through the development of games tailored to address mental health issues. While I myself am a huge proponent of seeking professional help through mental health specialists, I also believe there's a space for gaming, especially in today's climate. So, in today's episode, we're going to delve into the exciting realm of gamification and its transformative potential in the realm of mental health, highlighting how it can help dispel stereotypes, break down stigmas, and create more supportive and engaging experiences for those seeking improved mental well being. So, with that, I'm excited to welcome Nisha Lehmann to the podcast. So, welcome to the show, Nisha.
Thank you. That introduction was wow. I feel like there's a very high bar now. Maybe we should lower people's expectations a little bit.
No, listen. So, I never really found myself am not a gamer, right? Like that's not. We have an old Wii console that is probably. I think it's one of the original Wii consoles, and I grew up with an old-fashioned Nintendo in the house, kind of thing. So gaming has never been like part of my arena. I didn't know anything about it, or I don't really get into it as much. I'm a book reader, and I escape through my stories and that kind of thing. And so when you brought this conversation topic to the forefront, I thought I've got to do some research. And I started researching it and I thought, holy cow, like it's a need because there's a whole demographic out there that they do struggle with mental health. And if you want to reach them, like meet them where they're at. And gaming is one of those places. And we also do better when we gamify things, which is so funny because it really is a form of motivation. So I think this is a much needed conversation, and I have no doubt that it's going to be a really good one. So no worries at all.
Okay, let's hope. I cross my fingers now. So
So you're good. So let's ease into it then. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how it led to combining your appreciation of gaming and mental health.
so yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to glorify my situation that much because I think a lot of people suffer from mental health issues, and I'm not everything I went through was not a particularly a harrowing experience. I suffered burnout, but long before it was actually an officially classified mental health issue. Very high stress with a very intense job where I had to travel, where I had to constantly be in meetings. Look, nothing special. I think we've all done this. Um, Couple that with becoming a new parent, going through what has to be some level of postpartum depression, although I'm not exactly sure because I was also never diagnosed with it. Losing my job during that same time, so a level of financial instability where any money I was making, what little there was, I was putting everything toward the child, which meant I had no, let's say, spending money or fun money I could use on myself. Where I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I felt quite irresponsible thing like, okay, let me go see a therapist when I have this boatload of expenses to take care of because the child is coming. It didn't. My life wasn't about me. It was about the kid. And then after that, it was the depression was, I don't know how to explain. It was probably the darkest place I've ever been in, and I was going through it alone, more or less, because it was just before the pandemic, but I wouldn't blame the pandemic on what I went through, although there are many people who can blame the pandemic, actually. There's a direct link between that and their mental health issues. But for me, what I really wanted and what I needed was an outlet where I could connect with peers, where I could connect with other people like myself, and just almost a mentor mentee kind of relationship where, because I didn't have the money to see a therapist. That just was, forget it. I'm sorry. I mean, this is expensive in the US. It's expensive pretty much everywhere. And it's most of the time not covered by your insurance. And it's also for me a very difficult thing to do. Coming to realize you have a mental health issue is one thing, but then being open enough to talk about it with someone who's judging you, someone who, or someone who, I don't know. For me, it's a nerve-wracking idea even now to think about going to see a therapist, because I think some people are suited for it if they're open enough to talk about their issues and they don't care what other people think. But I'm not that. Maybe that's also part of it. I still have a very deep-seated kind of, I don't know. I really do care what other people think, and I really want to make sure that I handle this on my own terms. I didn't want to be pushed to see a therapist just because that was the only option. And what I really wanted was an outlet where I could talk to others, but anonymously, privately, in a secured way. And what I kept finding were like Facebook groups. But of course, they're connected to your public profile, they're connected to your picture. And I mean, I don't know, if you work at a very large company and you start posting about the fact you have depression, maybe now it doesn't matter, but back then that was a huge taboo, or at least I felt like it was super uncomfortable, because there's something about mental health and talking en masse to people as well. Because if you're just posting how you feel, that's where the trolls come in. That's because they can see your face, they can judge you, they can post very hurtful comments that will ultimately just make your mental health issue worse. And I knew that wasn't the road I wanted to go down. And so for me, what I really needed was a place where people who were suffering from similar mental health issues could connect in with each other, but you didn't know anything about each other. You were not identifiable in a way. And the only reason why you were there is because you were suffering from alcoholism too, or substance abuse related issues, or you had had a miscarriage, or maybe you were also going through postpartum depression, right? Different groups for different reasons, to be able to connect in and just listen to other people and share when you feel comfortable, and kind of take a little bit of control back of your mental health. And this platform absolutely did not exist 5 years ago. I would argue it probably still doesn't exist now, but now you get this innovation of like AI therapists and talking to chatbots instead of therapists. I know that's the direction we're going, and that is what it is, I suppose. I'm not perfectly comfortable with this yet, but maybe my kids will be perfectly fine with that. But I think talking to a human and talking to another person who can relate to you is going to always be more valuable than anything a therapist could tell you. And so that's really where the app was born, this idea of, okay, well, let's use tech, something for good. Let's create a platform where people can anonymously and privately connect in to be able to talk about harrowing experiences and hopefully find a community with others.
And that is, first of all, don't discount your story, because even if you're just stressed, your mental health matters, and that stress can't snowball. So never discount your story. Also, you never know when somebody is going to have the same story, like you're saying, people that you can relate to, people who can say, oh, I'm feeling that too. So, thanks for sharing all of that, because that's huge. And you're right. Like, there is not a cheap and affordable way. Like, you have to be willing to shell out the money for therapy. And that is probably one of the biggest hindrances to just mental health support. And then even if you do find, like here we have the free mental health clinics, and they just want to write a prescription and say, go on your merry little way. And so that's a whole different situation that you find people struggling in, because fine, you're not feeling mentally stressed or anything, but now you have a physical dependency on something else. And there's nothing wrong with medication if you need it, but it's not going to be as effective as talking through your issues and talking through your problems and your struggles. And so providing that kind of support group, and that's why, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or, any of those anonymous groups, when you get together, that's why they're so effective, because you have that safe environment, but you also have that accountability. And so to take it online, you broaden that audience, you broaden the ability for people to connect with even more who are struggling with the same issues. And so I think that's a great idea. That does lead me to ask, though, just from my own personal experience and background and that kind of thing, do you have mental health professionals involved in your groups or anything like that?
So yes and no. I will have to caveat this a little bit. We don't have mental health professionals per se, like therapists, because I think this is a really saturated market. If you know you want to see a therapist or a professional, you know where to go. I think we don't even need to advertise them here because they're so well known. And post-pandemic, I honestly cannot imagine a person who's never heard of BetterHelp or one of these online shops where the therapist can meet you online and speak to you. So this is really more meant to be a peer-led, peer-driven assessment of your own mental health and what you're willing to bring to the table. But to that end, if you do feel like there's a risk of self-harm, or there's something more acute, there's something more serious, if you are typing those messages into the chat in your group, we do have a kind of, call it a scanner, like a spider, a bug that searches for like kind of specific keywords, suicidal, self-harm, gun, knife. I mean, there's a long list of them, and it's also an AI, so it's learning also by itself. So there's a little bit of AI in this. I'm sorry, I was trying to avoid all the AI for this, but not possible anymore. It's really pervasive in every part of the life. But the idea is, if there is something more acute happening that another person wouldn't be able to help you with, then you're automatically redirected to suicide prevention hotlines for whatever country you're in, or online counselors, or like 911 services, or things like this, where it's really more of an emergency situation. And that really does require some immediate attention from a medical professional. That being said, there's also a kind of self-policing mechanism in the group. So if you see that someone is writing bigoted comments, or more often than not, you get people who are trolls in the groups, and they're just spewing some nonsense that has nothing to do with anything, or they're automated most of the time, or they're pushing a product. That's what we see more often than not. Advertisers who enter into the group to try to advertise a particular drug or a particular whatever. We trust our users enough to know that if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not. And if you report that user to us, we kick them out. So that's really where the admins get involved, is you tell us if there's a problem, and we will happily take action to kick them out of the group. Because if there's any risk that the group is not safe anymore, clearly your trust is going to be breached and compromised. You're not going to feel the same talking about your issues if you know that there's a bot in there that's reading every word and pushing you a product for that, right? So we're trying to weed them out as much as possible. Trolling is never going to be something we can completely get rid of, and probably the cause of a lot of mental health issues, just as a caveat. But we do our best as and when users can tell us when they see suspicious activity and suspicious behavior. And once they tell us, we automatically take action. There's just for us, there's no room for negotiation. There's no room for us to kind of wait in that particular scenario, right? Because the longer that deviant is in the group, the more the group is compromised, and the group dynamic is what really makes the app successful. And so we trust our users to police themselves. It doesn't always work, which is why we also have the bot kind of constantly checking for keywords, triggers, call them. But that's as far as we go. I mean, we deliberately wanted to keep the app a private place, because we know that if you feel like you're being monitored by an admin, You're not going to speak the same. You're not going to talk the same. You're going to be a little more reserved. You're going to watch what you say. That's not what we want. We want raw, genuine conversations, emotions. If you're angry, let it out. If you're sad, let it. This is the place to do that. It's not supposed to be a place where you mince your words and write kind of tweet like messages, right? This is where you can say exactly what you think and really not be afraid, hopefully, of any judgment coming from that.
That sounds like a really good and safe space, and the confidentiality, because you do tend to mask when you're talking, even to a therapist. I know for me, when I have seen a counselor or a therapist, I tend to filter. I tend to self-edit. I'm not going to sit there and just bleed all over her couch or whatever, because I do care what she thinks, and I don't want her to sit there, and that's not what therapists do. I can tell you that as a marriage and family counselor, that's not my place. My place is to walk alongside, but there's still that mental, block that says, no, they're here to tell me that I'm an idiot, or that I screwed up, or that it's my fault that I'm in this position. And I think that does come from those real life trolls that we have, that impact and influence the way we think and the way we perceive ourselves. And that's a shame. It really is a shame. So it sounds like a really neat idea, a really safe place, and just an environment where you can be yourself. And so, what are your goals for it? Do you have goals to take it beyond just a support group type situation? Where does the gamification come in?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked, because it's a great segue into that. So basically, post-pandemic, you started seeing a lot of game design. So I've always been a gamer. Let me caveat this and back up a little bit. I've always been a gamer. I've been playing, first of all, Sega Genesis, so not that different from your Nintendo 64. But I'm a Sega girl. I started with Sonic the Hedgehog. But I was never actively gaming until I started university, and there was a huge community around it. So you'd get together to game and you'd talk, and that was when Halo was really big. So now I'm dating myself, okay? But that was when Halo was really big. Then Fortnite came out, and you just saw this barrage of incredible immersive experiences come out, and the games are so amazing now. The graphics, you compare Nintendo then to now, it's so different. But post-pandemic, if you flash forward, there are a lot of independent game designers and game developers who went through incredibly harrowing times during the pandemic and actually put those experiences into a game. And what I found so interesting about them is they elicit real, authentic emotion when you play them, and they are just basically cataloging and reflecting their experience in the game back to you. And it was such a revolutionary moment, because when I started to meet them, the game designers and the people who were doing it, they were basically saying that this was the only way they could cope during the pandemic, because there weren't a lot of other outlets. Everyone had to isolate anyway. So if you're going to isolate, design a game around your experience, of course. And what came out of it were these, because normally when you play a video game and the main character has a mental health issue, it's almost like a caricature. It's like this really over dramatized, you see them have depression, but they're falling down a hole. People don't realize there are levels of depression, right? You can still have depression and be functional. But it's always this over dramatized, excessive kind of form of the mental health issue, which makes all mental health issues look debilitating. But what was really cool post-pandemic is that you started to see the granularity of mental health. You started to see the different levels you could have, and you could started to experience them for yourself. And that's when I really thought, like, oh my God, this is the future. This is the future of kind of mental health therapy. And if these games can be used for good, if people can play them, it's such an amazing experience, because you separate yourself from your mental health issue in a way, because the avatar is going through it, not yourself, but you look at it also with a new pair of eyes. If you have OCD and you play a game about OCD, you're going to look at your OCD differently afterwards. And for better or worse, right? It's not always going to be, oh, I look at myself and look how great I am. But it allows you at least a perspective and a gauge on, okay, well, actually, my mental health issue is actually way worse than this guy, than this avatar. So maybe I do need to go see a professional, or maybe I do need to talk to someone else who's been through OCD, or maybe there's another drug trial or experiment or something that I can look at, or there are other games that are facilitated to me. And what's really interesting is if you play games for mental health issues that you don't have, because you suddenly get to have this incredible immersive experience of someone with OCD, even when you don't have it, to try to empathize more with them, to try to really understand what's it like, living with this. How can you cope day by day, and how can you be a better friend to that person? Can you be a better partner? How can you be, how can you kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit? So I really think that gaming is going to play a major role for mental health therapy and mental health counseling going forward. And that's why in the next iteration of the app, which will come out probably the end of January, there'll be a library of games included into the app, which is really what we want. So if you suffer from OCD, if you don't feel comfortable talking to a group, you have the option of playing this game. And once you play the game, it gives you a baseline for the conversation in the group. Did you guys play this game? What did you think? Did you think it was, oh, but I didn't think it was representing my issues? And then suddenly you've opened the door into the conversation about yourself in a way that's very undeliberate, not deliberate.
Yeah, yeah, it's very organic. Yeah.
Organic, yes. Mm-hmm.
For sure. And so there are several things that my brain is like, I need to say this. But yesterday I was telling my sister about the conversation that we were going to have this morning. And she said, I literally just saw an ad for an app for kids with ADHD. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because, I'm thinking you put, an app in the hand of a kid with ADHD or even an adult with ADHD. It's like, that seems like counterintuitive almost. But then this morning I was scrolling through TikTok while I was waiting for my hair to dry, and I was just like, there's this app for kids with ADHD. And I was like, holy cow. First of all, it's creepy. It's real creepy. The conversation was there and then the app was there. But it's to help them elongate their attention span, to help them stay focused on something more. And so I thought, well, no, that is very interesting that you can pull a game into it and gamify, because what do kids know these days, especially kids, is gaming and apps and that kind of thing. But also along the same line, I think that people who get into the role-playing games and being able to put themselves into that first person, that character's position, is the same for those of us who get lost in reading sometimes. It's storytelling. And when you're reading a book, for me, I like to put myself in the shoes of that main character. I want to experience what they're experiencing. And then I'm like, oh, I do have a totally different perspective of what they're going through, and, maybe relate it to something else that I'm experiencing or someone I know is experiencing. So I think that's genius, to be able to open the doors to those conversations through, especially the gaming community, because that is a very specific group of people who probably aren't as comfortable speaking about themselves to other people, because, that's just not part of their personality. And here you have opened that door into a whole new experience for them. So kudos to you for thinking that through. That's fantastic.
And kudos too to the designers who had the bravery and the confidence to actually take their experiences and say, well,
Yes.
someone might benefit from this someday. Let me avatar myself, which is it's not even that huge a thing anymore. I mean, if you've ever used Microsoft Teams or anything, there are now avatars available for almost everything, right? So it's not even like a special thing anymore. But I guess back then it would have been a really harrowing experience, right? To design a game based on your own experience, what you went through, the emotions that you felt, and to kind of have to relive all that in order to really make it authentic for someone else. So I don't deserve any credit for anything except trying to get a mass audience or trying to get more people into these games, because I really think if you play these games, and there's a kind of special subset around them, right? Halo, Fortnite, they're not going to be mental health cures, right? They're very nice distractions, but they're not going to cure your mental health issue. But these games that are actually designed by designers who went through mental health issues, these actually do have the potential, not to cure you necessarily, but to at least put you on the path to figure out where you are and what you need for yourself. Because mental health is so bespoke, right? Everybody is so different. They look at their mental health differently. That's why it really makes no sense to me why we treat it so differently from our physical health. It's just that's a totally separate conversation, I suppose. But if you look at it differently, then why not have an experience that might speak to you? And I hope these games can achieve that. Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, and even if you are talking Halo, which by the way, I've never played Halo, but I've read the books. So I have that. And so that's the only connection I can make to that. But you have it's a community, right? These people are already established in a community. So you're opening up this opportunity to be like, hey, I'm picking up on maybe, you are struggling with something. Let me show you these games over here, or this community over here, and then you've just plugged somebody else in. And so it's all about creating this network, this web, for people who may not have access to it otherwise. And so I think that is fantastic. But that leads me into thinking, as we were talking about, as you mentioned, the games have just changed and evolved over time. Just the technology in and of itself has changed over time. How do you see the technology evolving even in the future, and using just technology in general? Because I have a couple of, I know a couple of people who have used virtual reality as an immersion therapy and that kind of thing. And so I'm just wondering if you've thought that far into the future.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I was actually going to use this in my flip the script conversation with you to ask you what you think the role of tech is in the mental health space. I mean, look, tech can be used for good, but we know that it also can be used detrimentally, right? I mean, so many mental health issues have stemmed specifically from tech. And I honestly, and I hate to sound pessimistic to your users, but I don't think it's getting better, not with the advent of AI and deep fakes. Will inevitably come out of that, or have it's a really terrifying space to think about, because yes, it can be used for good, but the money is in the other side. And so how can we try to better ourselves? I mean, what I tell people is try to expose yourself to as much AI as possible, because the more you expose yourself to ChatGPT, the more you start to kind of decipher how they write and where you can really tell the difference. That's going to be huge body armor going forward, because the AI is only going to evolve more. It's only going to become more sophisticated going forward. We're in the fourth iteration of ChatGPT now, and I'm sure it's going to be we're going to be around for the 10th and the 12th and so on, right? And so the more you can arm yourself by reading what ChatGPT writes as opposed to a real person, and really even doing a line by line comparison, you start to see the differences. Actually, it's not foolproof when you write something with ChatGPT. But I do think that there's space for tech to be used for good. This is one. I certainly think. I mean, I don't know about the advent of AI therapists. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. There are many apps out there that already have this. Like WeSize one. There's a few, right, where you talk to. So it's significantly more cost effective to talk to an AI chatbot. But I don't know if you. I don't know. I'm not perfectly comfortable with it yet. I haven't wrapped my head around it. And virtual reality, like I said, the problem is it's very hard for me to generalize an answer around it, because it's because mental health again is so custom to everyone. So if it doesn't scare you being in that environment and actually walking through and being the avatar in the game, then I think it could be used for just incredible purposes. But I also think it can be highly triggering for people, right? It's very, very easy to be playing a virtual reality game and stumble across something that could trigger a memory for you, that could trigger a horrible episode, right? So use with caution is all I can say with this. But I think it's going to become mainstream. All of these things are kind of moving in that direction, which is why it's kind of, you have to find your niche of what works for you and go for that, because mental health therapy is going to end up being different for everyone. Now, some people are even experimenting with psychedelics around it, which I also think has huge potential if it's supervised by medical professionals, and you can trip safely, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mean, that has huge potential to be able to unlock really deep-seated trauma, and to be able to really look at, again, it's all about looking at things differently, looking at things from a different perspective, and not reliving the pain. If you can separate yourself from the pain of that experience, then you're hell of a long way along your recovery journey, your mental health journey, right? That's the hardest part, because the problem is we have such a bias when we look at mental health because it's our mental health. We experienced that, we went through that, we survived that. And so it's very hard to just shove it in a drawer and forget about it. But if you can separate yourself from it and have an objective point of view about your mental health, then I think you're on the road to recovery for sure.
Oh, definitely. And there are so many different just formats of therapy and you do have to find what works for you. That's the thing. And you have to find, especially if you're going to incorporate things like virtual reality, or ketamine treatments or whatever, kind of therapy that you're looking into, where you can trip safely, if you will. But you have to make sure that you are doing it under the care of somebody you trust, because you can't just jump into a virtual reality situation, find yourself in immersion therapy and be alone. Like, that's the worst idea you could possibly have. But playing a game, that's very different, because it does help you to take this outward look onto yourself and say, because that's how, with writing, when I wrote my first book, it became a very therapeutic process. And I tell people all the time when I'm doing counseling, write it down. Like, whatever you're feeling, just write it, because then when you go back and read it, you're like, oh, my subconscious was telling me something when I wrote all of that. And you have to make sure that you feel safe enough to write whatever comes into your head in order to get the biggest, fullest picture of it. So it's the same thing, being able to play this game and put yourself in that first person character's role and be like, oh, look, yeah, I could have done that differently, or this is how I solved that problem, or this is how I worked through this issue. So yeah, I think you are exactly right, though. It's very custom to the person, and you have to make sure that you are comfortable with the form of therapy that you're choosing.
Indeed. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so what kind of support do you need to take this concept to the next level?
What kind of support? I need all the support. No. So, no, I mean, look, we have a very small user base, but it's loyal because it's a gaming community, essentially. So we have just over 300 users in the app right now. Uh, that's, I don't know about the acquisition rate of that. I mean, we probably had a very high acquisition at the beginning and then started to taper off a little bit over the summer. Um, we launched the app in March, so we're also not that old. We've only been on the market maybe 9 or 10 months. I'm really looking forward to actually making the integrations, because the app right now, and I completely understand what our users are saying, that it's really plain. It's very kind of bare bones, because we didn't have a lot of time to do, because me and my team, we did all of the development and the integrations ourselves. And so we didn't really have a lot of time to think through every single angle and think through. We wanted to get the basic gist out there. We wanted it to be easy to use, so even anyone could pick it up and walk through the steps and understand what it's for. But that's it. There's really not a lot of fanfare. There's not a lot of fluff. There's not a lot of like real customer experience sophistication, let's call it. And I think that's in one way really good, because it's a direct app. It's straight to the point. It's like, this is what it's for, and this is, if you need it, great. If you don't, then okay. But have it on your phone. Maybe you might need it one day, right? Um, but we really want to make sure that we add in enhancements that are useful. So making it easier for the groups to connect in with each other, making it, praising people, adding these elements of kind of allowing people to praise small accomplishments, which we don't do enough in our normal lives. But like, if you're, I don't know, if you're a recovering alcoholic and you don't drink for 3 days, that's a huge accomplishment, actually, and it shouldn't be undersold. And so we want people to write about their accomplishments and brag about them. It's like a bragging wall, right? Humble bragging wall, where you can say, look, I didn't drink for these 3 days, or I didn't have suicidal thoughts for these 2 weeks, or I'm recovering and I'm starting to really feel better. If you can share your progress, that's already so encouraging for everybody else. But we don't really have a space for it right now in the app. So there are a lot of things we want to add and a lot of things we want to do, including the games, of course, because that's a huge part of where we see the app going, and the future acquisition, call it. But it would be great if we could have more beta testers, basically people who are downloading it and using it and giving us feedback, so that we capture essentially all of the integrations that you are asking for in one go in the next round. So, or at least as many as possible, right? So when we release it next time, it's kind of it almost has a new look and feel, like it's a new app where it has brand new features, and also we want to make it free. Right now you have to pay, but it's because we don't want ads in the app. That's really the reason behind it. That's really what we need. We need people who are willing to give it a try for us and tell us what you think, your kind of unsolicited, candid feedback about what we could improve, what you think the app needs in order to really take it to the next level. And yeah, we need to continue to promote it. That's the other kind of side of the coin. As much as I don't like social media, it's like a necessary evil for entrepreneurs and for people who are trying to position things. And so we need to do a better job too of making sure that people know about the app, and that because I think there's a use case for just about any person suffering from mental health issues to have it, at least have it on your phone. And yeah, I think if we do those things, we'll be hopefully in the right trajectory.
I like it. Have you ever heard of, and this, I literally have just learned about them like in the last couple of weeks as I was kind of researching and learning before our conversation, but it's called Geek Therapy. And they have a summit called TAGS, TAGGS, and it stands for Therapeutic and Applied Geek and Gaming is
Yes,
their summit.
I know it.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know
I
it.
know it.
I got sucked into it. Like I was sitting there like, this is a huge, like this is big. This is a big deal. And so if you hadn't gotten into it or heard of it, I was like, that's a resource that I think that could take you to the next level even. I was impressed with it for sure.
No, for sure. I mean, we've already been in a few like rudimentary conversations with them, but like I said, at that time we were absolutely unready to position anything there. So I think when we get the next iteration of the app done, which is still a work in progress, but as and when we are at that goal, I'm really happy to explore the idea. There's another great organization too called Games for Change. And that's really where that's kind of our source of information. They've been great enough they've been so supportive of what the work that we're doing. And they're amazing because they promote these kind of game designers that are making games specific to mental health, specific to environment, climate change, specific to societal issues. It's almost like an impact gaming organization, call it. Where they encourage game designers to really, don't shy away from how you really feel about something, put it into a game, and allow people that experience to walk through it with you. So no, I think it's also on our list. It's on our like kind of wish list of things we need to get done, but the list just gets longer and longer now.
It does, and you will continue to see that as mental health becomes even more to the forefront. Like you think it's at the forefront now. I think in the next, at least the next year, especially as the kids who they were starting school, about the time the pandemic hit and that kind of thing, we're going to see mental health issues just kind of explode in that adolescent age group and that kind of thing. I think that, and that's the target demographic. I think that will benefit most from these kinds of games and that sort of thing, because they also kids and teenagers, they don't want to talk about their feelings, but if you provide this safe place, and of course obviously you're looking at dealing with minors and that sort of thing, so you have to, that's a whole nother layer of security and confidentiality and some gray areas there that you have to work within, but at the same time I think it's going to be something that a very specific group of people are going to need in the next couple of years.
No, for sure. And I mean, honestly, the other kind of, let's say, driving force to create this app was thinking about the next generations and the kind of mental health issues they'll face. That it's probably going to be very different from what we're going through now. We're just grazing the tip of the iceberg right now when we talk about identity issues, body image issues, and I already mentioned tech, but this again just terrifies me. But there's, the
Yeah.
catfishing and the cyberbullying, and these are all relatively new phenomenon. It's not like these have been around for ages and ages. So, I mean, as the technology increases, we're absolutely going to see the next generation suffer from that. And so if they have an outlet to be able to connect with each other, they're going to be able to share experiences that their parents simply have no idea what the hell they're talking about, right? It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily meant to fix the generational gap, but I hope I can get a little bit educated about some of the issues that are up on the forefront or upcoming, right? So I can prepare myself too better as a parent to be able to talk through some of these things with my kid. Because if he comes to me and says, "Hey, mom, I'm being gaslit at school," first of all, I've never experienced this. I have no clue what it feels like. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I could possibly tell him that would be of comfort. So it's like up to us too, as the older generation that's stemming these technological issues, to really think through the consequences and educate ourselves to be able to protect them. And maybe the app is one option.
Yeah, and look, that's a whole nother group of people, parents and caregivers and guardians. That's a whole nother group that you could target on how to help your child, or warning signs and that kind of thing. Like, man, there's so much potential, and I'm excited to see where it goes, because it is the next generation of what's going to be needed in mental health wellness. Because going back to the AI bots and stuff, you cannot take human element out of therapy. You cannot take a human therapist or counselor or mentor or anything like that and replace it with a robot, because there is a human soul at play on both ends of it. And that's where we connect, is through our souls, through our emotions and that kind of thing. And so to take that out, you can't. And so I know that what you're doing is a big deal, and it's very exciting, and I'm glad to see somebody taking it on. Now, it's not going to replace people. You still need people. You can't get lost in your online world. You need people. We are humans. We are made to connect with one another and have relationships. But to bridge that gap, to start that connection, even online, I think, congratulations. That's a great idea.
Thanks. No, let's see what happens. That's the hope. If apps like this exist, and then humans are still kind of relevant, but I don't know. Maybe the next generation will be like, "Oh, mom, you just never understood. You just never understood the power of robots." I don't know. I mean, I hope not, but that's one can still be optimistic, at least in this moment.
There will be two of us at least. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we are here. We are to the flip the script. I'm done. It's your turn. You take over and let's go with it and see what happens.
Well, I was curious to ask you, right? Because you're in the field. You're a marriage counselor, so you're dealing with issues like divorce. You're dealing with issues like, so when you have patients, what do you call them? They're not patients.
They're clients.
Yeah. Yes. So sorry. When you have clients that come and are suffering from, like, let's say, technologically related issues, and online dating or ghosting, or what's your response to them? I mean, do you recommend technology to address technological issues, or do you think really just getting them off the online dating apps and dating in real life is the solution? I'm just curious what you think.
And it's really hard, because that is the day and age. I I always say, like, this is one of those things I always say, I blame the microwave. I blame the microwave because it gives us this whole, I get it right now, or I get it faster. I want it. I want it. I want it. It's like this microwave technology. All of a sudden it's at the tip of your fingers and it's just there. And then technology has just really ramped up to, I can do whatever I want right here, on this little device. And it's all just, the world is my oyster within a point of the finger kind of thing. And I think that's a very dangerous, when it comes to human relationships, it's very dangerous, because it goes back to that filtering and the self-editing and the masking. Like, you're not going to, it is very rare. I won't say never, because there's always an exception, but it's very rare that you're going to get 100% of the person that you are reaching out to and trying to connect with through a screen. Like, there's body language, there's, expressions, there's energy, right? Like, when you are around a person, you can feel the vibe or the energy from that person, usually within meeting them. Like, that guy gives me a weird feeling. You don't get that through a screen. You can't get that through a screen. So no, I try to encourage people, yeah, you may meet like online, but geez Louise, that's hard for me to get on board with, only because I know human nature is going to be that I'm hiding part of myself from you behind this device that I've got in front of me. So no, I don't tend to, but it's really hard because that's what everybody else is doing. And so you have to find the same person with the same mentality to say, maybe we don't use our devices to connect with one another.
That's interesting because, yeah, I mean, I think that problem is, well, it's going to proliferate for sure. I mean, even in my generation, and I'm like dating myself again, but like, you know, I'm in, let's say, an elder millennial, so I'm not like very, very old, but I'm not in the Gen Z, Gen whatever. But I mean, I completely understand the idea of online dating, and I understand why it would be natural for people because yeah, as you mentioned, it's there. And so, I guess so. If you can look 5 years in the future, what do you think the future of therapy looks like? What do you think the future of counseling looks like? What's your take on? Do you think that you'll still be employed? Do you think that you would have like a chatbot kind of as your maybe assistant, or maybe something you bounce opinions off of or get second opinions from, or you feel like if you're still having a job in 5 years, you wouldn't integrate the tech because what you're doing is working?
It's a good question. I think that, I grew up like, I'm with you. I turned 40 this year. So I'm not Gen Z, but I'm not like, I am a geriatric millennial or whatever they want to call it to insult us these days. And so, but I grew up with technology in my house from as early as I can remember. My dad had like an old Commodore 64, and I remember sitting in his lap when he was using it, kind of thing. And so, I have been around and I have embraced technology as it has changed over the years. So I'm not afraid of technology in the sense that it is a great tool. But I think we have to remember that technology is a tool and it cannot replace people. It cannot replace human connection. As much as, we'd like to think that technology can replace anything and everything. We've seen over the years how technology has failed. And there's a reason they make movies about AI taking over, like we don't have total control over it sometimes. I kid, but not all technology has been a good advancement. And so you have to use that common sense. You have to use the ability to reason out, am I going to make this situation worse or better? Again, it's a tool. I have no problem utilizing it. I don't think I would ever, because, even ChatGPT comes with the warning that, hey, some of my information may not be correct. And it's like, oh, okay. So you have to be able to weed that out anyway. So you may as well connect with the person before you connect with the technology. So I do think that we will find that we go too far sometimes with our technology and embracing, and we will go back to that human connection and needing the human connection first and foremost. I think we will realize that, whether it's 5 years or 10 years down the road, I'm not sure, but hopefully by then I will have passed the baton and somebody else can take over, because I can't really see myself. I already had very few clients right now as it is. I went into authoring books because I thought books are a lot more simple than people. And so, yeah.
I love your optimism. I think my mindset is in a completely different place, but I love the fact that you're yeah, you have a very like strong spirit about connection with people, and I understand completely where that comes from, because it's what we know. I mean, I just think, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Let's see what happens, but I hope let's say I hope you're right. I really, really hope you're right.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, maybe one last one. As a professional, as a counselor, as a daughter, sister, mother, name all of the roles you have. And what do you do to maintain your sanity? I know I have my kind of like daily routines that I need to do in order to make sure that my mental well-being is taken care of. What does yours look like?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked that before. And I'm pretty simple. Like, I am not a complicated person. I am very much so. I try every day at some point to remind myself that I am a blessed person and that I should be grateful for everything that I have, because I'm not comparing myself to anybody else, but I know that what I have and the opportunities I've been giving, I am privileged, and I am blessed to have the life that I have. And I love the life that I have. And I wouldn't want anybody, even going through the very dark and very hard things that I have gone through just in the last 10 years, I wouldn't trade any of that. Even in the last 14 years, if you look at the fact that my kid is 14 and I had about 11 months of untreated postpartum psychosis that I went through, that was the darkest time in my life. And I came through it. And if I can come through that, I know that each day is a blessing and I can come through anything. So to remind myself every day just to be grateful for what I have. And I would encourage everybody and anybody to do that. Like, that is the one thing that if you can set your mindset to be gracious and grateful, and just to have what I call the attitude of gratitude, as cliche and goofy as it may sound, but if that's the attitude you can embrace even at one point during your day, it will change your entire outlook for a very long time, because you'll be like, oh, you know what? I wasn't guaranteed today and I have it. And so that is something to be grateful for. I wasn't guaranteed another day with my spouse or with my kid, or, to do X, Y, Z. I think if you can just remember to be thankful for that. And so that is my go-to every day at some point. It's never at the same time. It's usually at a time where I'm feeling down or stressed or frustrated. And I'm like, you know what? It's time to be grateful, Jennifer. It's time. And so it's kind of just a little mental trick there. But as far as like a routine, that kind of thing, I don't have much of one. It's whatever the day calls for. It's whatever my calendar tells me I'm doing. And when I find myself needing to be grateful, I take a break.
Cool. Yeah, no, I have this moment too, but it's stargazing. It's like, it's not necessarily a gratitude moment, but it's going out on the balcony and looking up in the sky and just kind of realizing how small I am, and how and how lucky not just me, but everyone is in this moment. That, like, it's just so fluky that we are even alive right now, and that we have this planet, and we have the opportunity for life. It's so random. I mean, I guess we never think about how random the universe is, but for me, that's the moment when it kind of really puts my problems in perspective a bit more, right? It's not necessarily like I'm grateful for this moment, but I do feel gratitude about the beauty of the universe, and about just being able to look up and realize that it's so insignificant, this moment and what you're feeling right now. And there are so many bigger problems. There are asteroids, and there are comets, and there are things that are just so out of our control, but this moment is actually in your control. So that would be mine. Yeah,
I love that. Stargazing is one of those things. We moved out to the country, like big time country, about 6 years ago, and that's one of my favorite things, is to be able to go outside and just look up and actually see the stars. We're no longer in a subdivision where there are lights and stuff getting in the way. You can see the stars, and it makes you feel so small, but at the same time, to think that you get to be a part of it, you get to see it, you get to experience it. And that moment that you are looking at those stars, that moment was made for you. Those stars were put there for you to look at in that moment, because if they weren't, what would you look up at? And so just to think, I am kind of small compared to those universe, but at the same time, this moment was gifted to me. And so I think that's huge. I love stargazing. I can sit out there for hours and get lost in it completely. Are you ready for your big question? You've had all of this time to think about it, and I have the big question ready for you. And so we're really, really, the expectation is high that you're just going to wow us. No, I'm just kidding. There's no pressure. No pressure at all. I just want to know, okay, if there is one piece of advice or encouragement that if somebody walked away and heard nothing else, what would you want them to hear today?
There's no one size fits all when it comes to mental health, is what I'd say. Everybody's trying to convince you that there is, with, like AI is going to solve your problems, or ChatGPT is going to solve your problems. That is AI. Technology is going to solve your problems, or whatever. I mean, everyone seems to have a different idea, and that it can fix everything, or can fix everyone. And honestly, I mean, there's just no there's no panacea for mental health. It's about you. It's about your experience. It's about what you went through, and don't rush your recovery. Is the other maybe like
Yes.
two, right? Because you might think, oh, I should be feeling better than this. It's so easy to beat yourself up when you're suffering from
Yeah.
mental health issues. It's so, especially if you, I don't know, if you feel ashamed of having a mental health issue or you feel like you can't talk about it. You're not alone would be the one I would say, takeaway number one. But also, please don't rely on any kind of one size fits all solution for mental health. Explore all your options and figure out what's right for you, because it's going to be different than what's right for your neighbor. It's going to be different than what's right for your sister, for your mother, right? We all have different needs and we all have different issues, and that's perfectly normal. That's what makes us so diverse as a species. But take pride in that, and try to find the outlet that works best for you. And if it's talking to your peers, that's great. If it's talking to a professional, also fine, right? We're not competing in this space. If we can cure each other and help each other through hard times, then we all win, right? So maybe that's it.
No, that's great. No, that is fantastic because you are right. Like your story isn't the same as mine. We may have, we most both may have suffered postpartum depression, but my journey and your journey are very different. That doesn't mean that we can just plug into one therapy and say this is going to work for me. You do have to find what works for you because you are an individual. Your journey is an individual journey, and your treatment is an individual treatment, however that may look. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Like that's the biggest thing. Like don't be afraid to go find the help that you need, because sometimes I think there's a stigma of weakness that comes with saying I need help. There's more strength in saying I need help than there is weakness. So definitely.
Yeah, that's
Well,
that's that's probably wiser than what I had. So that's a good place to leave off.
it's a team effort. It was a team effort because what you said triggered that in my head, and I was just
Good.
like, no, it's a team effort. No, for sure. So, Nisha, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation. Like, I'm excited to see what happens next. I will definitely be keeping tabs and being like, okay, what's coming up next? Because I think it's going to be something that, whether I get on board with embracing all of the technology out there or not, I know that there are people that need what you have to offer, and so I'm very excited for you and for your project.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, and like I said, if you want to reach out to us, we are available on. I can't believe I'm saying it out loud. We are available on every social media platform, which is true, but I don't particularly like it. But yeah, it's true. I don't know if I should plug what we're doing
Yes.
now, but I'm going to.
Yes.
So the social media handle is at confidconvos. The app is called Confidential Conversations, kind of similar to this podcast name, actually. So good. Confidential Conversations is what it's called. You'll find it on the Google Play, on App Store. The website is confidconvos.com. Be sure to check it out. We're always posting about new games. We're posting about new research coming out. We're posting anything that really has to do with mental health at all, like podcasts we found interesting that are talking about new therapies in mental health, or articles. And we write a lot of our own thought research on mental health as well, where we think it's going. We actually recently just wrote a piece about AI and mental health that's worth checking out if you have a chance. It's all on the website. So yeah, please reach out to us and enjoy the content we put out there. And thanks, Jennifer, for the opportunity to chat.
Absolutely. And all of that's going to be in the show notes. So it'll be as easy as walking over there and clicking a button, and it will all show up at your fingertips, because that's what technology does for us these days.
It can't solve your problems, but it can make it a little easier to get in touch. There you go.
I love it. Okay, awesome. Thank you.